We're now going to talk about a poem by Larry Eigner called Bookshelf. It was written in April of 1983. Larry Eigner, here in San Francisco, we wanted to talk about poems that are related to San Francisco. Eigner is not a San Francisco poet in a sense, but he moved to San Francisco moved to Berkeley in 1978, having been in Swampscott, Massachusetts for many, many years. He was described by Charles Bukowski as the greatest living poet at the time. Eigner wrote thousands of poems that are now available in a 4-volume edition. And he typed his poems, we'll talk about in a second, for a long time on a manual typewriter. It was a Royal 1940 manual Royal typewriter. Later, I believe, he got an electric typewriter. And he wrote thousands of poems, and they are, some people say, the closest, fullest realization of Charles Olson's idea of composition by feel. These are poems that are on the page. And you get a little sense of it in the poem that we're talking about. But I urge you to get at least one of the 4 volumes of the collected poems of Larry Eigner. They're on an 8.5 by 11 page, so that feel of the big typewritten page could be reproduced. To me, one of the great poets ever. He was, we used to use the word palsied for the situation, but really, I think, muscularly disabled critically by a badly bungled forceps delivery at birth, something that one thinks shouldn't or doesn't happen anymore. And that left him really unable to use his hands. But he figured out, I believe it's his left hand, how to type with 1 or 2 fingers. And he wrote thousands of poems. And he heard all along that here in San Francisco there was a burgeoning scene of people who were open-minded about people with differences. One of the great things about a few blocks of New York City and many, many blocks of the Bay Area, and a couple of blocks in Venice, California, and a few others, I'm sure Burlington, Vermont, and some other places in the United States. And this place that we've come to is famous for taking in people with difference. And Larry was one of those. And he came here in 1978, and he realized these were his peeps. So while he's not affiliated with the Beats, he is closely affiliated with the Chapter 9.1 poets, the language poets. He was an older member of that group. He inspired them. They became his friends. In fact, the first issue of Language magazine, which was, I think, published by Barry Watton and Ron Silliman, I could be wrong about that, and if so, I apologize, included poems by Larry Eigner. He was there at the beginning. So this discussion we're going to do now will end up in ModPo in Chapter 9.1, Week 8 of the course. It's called Bookshelf, and I will read it, and then we'll talk about it. Bookshelf. Is this biomass? Where's it raining? Bins. Sliding around. Oh, here's a different slant. The sun on a puddle in the street. Now it's morning again. The wall has extra room. So, let's just get a sort of a general take. Jennifer Pryor, just start us off anywhere. What do you think's going on here? You don't have to be complete. Just say a word or two. What do you think? Is there a scene? Do we have a situation?
Well, at first I thought there was a scene, and he is picking up books and putting them back down, and then putting them in bins and sliding.
So there's something going on with books. Maybe being packed, maybe... Jay, what's going on? It's hard to figure out, but get us started. I'm sure by the end of this conversation we will really come to a consensus.
I really like the last sentence. The wall has extra space, the extra room.
And why would the wall have extra room in the narrative story sense of this scene, of this situation? Why would the wall have extra room?
Because it's morning again. everything.
Oh, just generally, when the sun comes up, there's more room on the wall. I like
It's
that.
like metaphor, you know. It's everything starts new again, and there's room, there's possibility.
Callie, what's going on? You have books. Probably more books than a person your age should have, because think about what happens when you're really old like me. What will you do with all those books?
Well, I just moved apartments, and so I did feel a bit like I was just going to be crushed by the weight of them all. It's
Yeah.
physical objects.
This is probably something that in 50 years people will only remember, that situation of having too many books, of not knowing where. But I'm sorry to assume that it's about his books. Do we have any evidence that this is about his books? Callie?
No, I just assumed
We
that
don't.
they are.
And it's not bad to assume that they are. Susie K., I'm sorry. I promised I wouldn't call on you, but here I am. Bookshelf. Is this biomass? What kind of question is that? What's biomass?
A living thing.
A living thing, yes. Alex, in relation to books, why would anybody ask about biomass?
Molly.
Alex first.
Are they alive?
Say it louder.
Are they alive? I mean, is this a
No.
I've got the definition of biomass.
You're actually going to read a definition from a smartphone? Okay, Melanie, go ahead.
What's the source of the
And then Pamela,
There are two definitions that I think are both interesting in this context. Number one, the total quantity or weight of organisms in a given area or volume.
Yes.
And number two, organic matter used as a fuel, especially in a power station for the generation of electricity.
Rachel, what are books?
They're made out of papers.
They're made out of trees. Pamela? What were you going to say? You are Pamela.
I'm Pamela.
You're Pamela. I'm so sorry.
Linda. I'm Linda.
Linda.
Well, I see it as books are what people produce. So it's the biomass of their life,
Oh.
an expression of their
Material
own,
productivity.
the organism.
Okay, can we have a less fancy reading of this situation? Who wants to give it a try? Bob, tell us briefly what's happening. If there is a story, what's happening?
He's viewing books or collections of books as being just a bunch of X trees that are being pushed around in these bins.
Where, inside or outside?
This feels inside.
Okay, if it's inside, bookshelf, is this biomass? Where is it raining? Bins sliding around. Any idea what might be happening inside? You are
I'm Michelle.
Michelle.
I think it's some kind of natural disaster, earthquake, storm going on.
It doesn't have to be a disaster for a poet who earns no money to be in an apartment where it might actually be leaking. Is it possible? It may not be the end because there's an outside here. I could be wrong. But bookshelf. What happens to the IKEA bookshelf, which is made of what? Particle board. Just sit particle board in water, what happens to it? It becomes biomass. It turns to its pulp state. It's possible, I'm not saying this is the final reading, but possible that Larry Eigner is, what time of day is it in the beginning? It seems to be night because the sun rises, we get sun later. It seems like an overnight storm because we get, here's a different slant, the sun on a puddle in the street. Now it's morning again. So it's possible that this is a long night in which what's happening? It's raining. And Eigner's mobility was very limited, so let's just assume that he was in bed enduring what? How many of you have had this happen to you? Kate, what's he enduring?
All those books,
Yeah, he's just
Where do those bins go? What are they catching?
collecting the water. That is
It's a night of drip, drip, drip. My books and bookshelf are turning into pulp. Maybe. I don't know that this is right. And then the line. Where's Robin?
Emily Dickinson.
I'm right here.
Robin. Oh, here's a different slant. Now that's a turn. Can you describe how it's a turn? Bob muttered Emily Dickinson, just a nice Mod Po reference, and we should get to it, but I don't think we need it yet. Oh, here's a different slant. How is it a turn? You know it's a turn by a couple of things.
Well, since you've told us that the layout of the page is
Mattered,
really important,
yeah.
right? So that he's back, that sentence starts back, or that
Yes,
phrase
so it's
starts
kind
back.
of a stanza in the Eignerian
A
sense.
new room, right?
Any other evidence?
And O.
Oh, what's O without an H
Yeah,
in English?
O without an H.
O without an H. What's O? Who uses O in the English language without an H? O with an H is something else. O with an H means, what? What?
Yeah.
But
Honorific?
Poets.
poets, Shelley. Oh, that Shakespearean rag, so elegant, so intelligent. Here's it. So it's poetic. It's a big moment. Anything else? You're on a roll here.
Well, and it's a different slant. We're going to look at things differently.
Ah, good. It's a kind of reset. It's not only a tab reset on the manual typewriter, but it's a reset of poetic diction. Oh, and then, hey, let's try a different approach. Different approach to what, Rachel?
To visualizing what's happening in the situation.
That's great. So how many of you have spent a night somewhat restive, not sleeping as well as you should? There's a noise, something flapping outside, and it's not bad enough that you have to get up and go fix it, or there's some like goblin shadows in the room, or you think that the baby is crying but she's not, or I don't know, right? We've all been there to some degree, and then the day comes, and what happens at daybreak to those thoughts? Dale, what happens at daybreak? What's different after that long night of shadows and ambiguities?
Light.
Light gives what? What does light enable?
Illumination. Right?
Illumination is a perfect word. Mark, what does light do for this poet?
Maybe a different perspective.
A different perspective, a clarity, right? Oh, here's a different slant. On what? On what? A different slant on what? Kate Green?
Well, the sun on a puddle in the street. It's one of the most poetic lines of the short poem. The rest are fragments of images, and that's so he's falling back on poetry after kind of a rough night.
And after a rough night, we get some. Nice. That's a subtle reading. And what do we know meteorologically, weather-wise?
Weather's better.
Sun's out. So whatever it was that was oppressing him, whether it was a bookshelf being discarded outside that he's thinking about at night, or the books in his own apartment because of a leak or whatever, the sun, we get to start over. And so many of Larry Eigner's poems, for someone who struggled so mightily, so many of his poems see the morning as a new, heroism is too strong a word, a new reality, a new placing of the feet on the ground to start again. And here we have that. Oh, here's this different slant, the sun on a puddle in the street. And then this great line. Emma, you want to try it? This great line. Now it's morning again.
I suppose just, building on the fact that it's now, I can look at it with a new perspective. Now I can look at it with a fresher kind of step back and decide whether I really want to be upset about it.
Yes, good. Has anybody ever in your young years said to you, maybe a parental figure, said to you, Emma, it's a new morning, a new day. What do they mean by that? It's kind advice, not always taken well.
It means that it's a new day with new possibilities and with new opportunities to make it maybe a little more positive and less negative.
And what would be negative? Thank you, that was great. What would be negative about Larry Eigner's situation in this story that we have struggled to piece together? What would be negative in the nighttime situation? What's negative? We've already said it, but let's say it again.
Some of his books were ruined, and maybe
his
now.
Books?
Yeah.
Larry Eigner his books may be pulp. That's a disaster for someone like Larry Eigner. And yet,
there's more room on the shelf.
Did everybody hear what she said? He's turning toward optimism. He's turning toward what I call bravery. I said heroism before. Bravery is a better word. He's saying, wait a minute, it's not raining. Yeah, the bins are full of water. I've lost my books in bookshelf, maybe. The sun's out, and now I have room on my wall.
For new books.
For more books or
Another book.
just space. And I also got what out of it? I think that Larry Eigner would rather have this than the IKEA shelf and all that. I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to ask people for just further thoughts. I think maybe you're starting to feel that our location here in San Francisco at the Center for the Books is a great place for talking about this poem. And so I'll invite anybody who cares about books and about their mass, their biomass, to say something if you want. Not everybody, but some of you. In fact, I'll ask our camera person to get that logo into this video. It's on that beautiful wall. Center for the Book. As I read the poem, here we go. And then I just want and you're probably also getting the impression that I love Larry Eigner and I tremendously respect his prioritizing. Bookshelf. Is this biomass? Where is it raining? That's a midnight question. Like, where is that leak? Did I have bins sliding around? Oh, here's a different slant. Paraphrase that, anybody? Oh.
Like a positive
Here's
slant.
a-
Here's
here's
like
how
a
a way of
new,
thinking
yeah,
about
new
it.
way, a new beautiful
How many
way.
of you would like to, in the morning, every morning, to take your problems that were besetting you? How many of you were beset by problems while you're trying to get to sleep? In the morning, if we could have Eigner's hope, oh, here's a different slant. And slant, Bob, Dickinsonian, slant refers to,
Off-center.
yes. And in Dickinson,
Near rhyme.
The truth.
Tell all the
tell all the truth, but tell it slant, success in circuit lies, right? The different slant here is metaphorical, as I think it was Emma who said, it may not have been me, but somebody else, a different perspective, a different way of thinking, but it is literally a different slant of light. And for visual artists, artists who put their poems in the field of the page, this is what the people who use the machines behind me care about. They put one letter, one character at a time, and they set that type, hoping to create a visual field that's so much visual and as well textual, right? So, yes.
He looks out the window to see the sun on the puddle.
Yes.
So that seems sort of interesting that he has to look out from where he is to see something new.
Yes. Well, ironically, things have really gotten topsy-turvy in his life because inside it seems to be raining. Outside is where things are dry. This is the world of Larry Eigner. Bookshelf. Is this biomass? Where is it raining? Bins sliding around. Oh, here's a different slant. The sun on a puddle in the street. Now it's morning again. The wall has extra room. Love this guy. All right, let's just collect some thoughts, feelings. It's okay in Mod Po to be non-academic and just say what this poem makes you want to do in life or tomorrow. Duff, I'm calling on you, cold call.
I sort of disagree on where this poem is going. I don't think it was so much about the rain coming in and destroying the books and all. It's that closed night where wondering where it's raining, what is going on, what is life all about, and then suddenly, I mean, these are all observations of his room, and then the claustrophobic piece ends at the end. Oh, there's more room. It's okay.
Yeah. Jake?
Yeah, I'm with that. I didn't see it as rain actually coming into the house. It's the sitting in the house. house and looking at your books, and then suddenly like noticing it's
What's
raining
the question
outside.
about, is this biomass?
Well, I think when I moved a year and a half ago and I didn't have my books for 3 months and then I got them back, it's like, but my books are me, I am my books. This is, like, seriously, like, I wouldn't wish the experience on anybody not having your books. It's just like, I think he's talking about himself, some kind of quintessential, like,
I
this is
am my books,
thoughts,
my body, my book's body.
and my biomass, like all that, and then maybe there's a little bit room in this like mental bookshelf or something.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love my books. I love a poem about loving your books, you know? You can't be without them. I mean,
And the books makes your mind spacious. Reading a book makes you open.
So you think the end is a paradox? The space has been opened up by what?
By reading, reading his poem.
Bob?
Interesting parallel with the first poem here, I think. He starts out.
You're referring to Joanne Kiger's poem.
Yeah.
By what title?
When I used to focus on the worries, everybody, and she starts, in that poem, she starts out worrying.
Joanne Kiger does.
Joanne Tiger worried, and he's worrying too, and then there's like, she falls into the gap, especially he finds a different slant because the sun must be an angle, and he's able to see that rare side
It's
of the
another
sun.
San Francisco poem. Except this is Berkeley, not Belize. Don?
Experience, frustration, reframing, re-anchoring, redemptive salvation. Question mark?
Yeah, I really do. I like that. I like the reframing, turning toward some kind of salvation. Who would try to follow Don's suggestion? Who would try to say what the salvation entails if it is such? Louise, you want to try? Is there anything salvational about it?
that the poem could come out of it. From a hardship situation. From some,
Gordon?
Yeah, that he has, I mean, room to create now. I guess that's kind of places he can put these new poems.
What's the relationship between a poet and her or his books? Sorry, a poet's poems and the books the poet owns? Jake?
Yeah, I guess it does confine you a little bit. Like that's.
How do you
that's
got in order to, just thinking about the anxiety of influence, in order to clear the space you need for a poem that takes up space, because this is a poem that's a poetics that's spatial, you have to sort of render your books either actually through rain or in your mind. You have to render them biomass.
Burn them. Yeah.
Kate?
Reminds me of Robert Creeley's.
Reminds you of Creeley?
Dishonest Mailman.
Tell us why.
My letters, and they put them into a fire. I see the flames, I do not care. And it's the idea of dust to dust. But there's something larger than that, and that is the poem.
And a poet like Eigner, who's constantly thinking about the state of his body and constantly thinking about poetry that helps him transcend limitations. He's always talking about words that climb over a wall, something that he physically couldn't do, but words can do. So it's not as simple as a poet of disability using poetry to overcome disability. It is not that. That's not it. It's rather saying that disability makes him think that he has a connection to his books through the concept of biomass and mortality, physicality. I'm going to read it one more time and call someone who's not expecting it to say something. Because that's the Modpo way, Jack. Bookshelf. By the way, why does he type bookshelf that way? Why does he space it out?
Space, yeah.
There's a space between each letter.
Oh, books.
It looks like
The way books are lined on the shelf.
He's using typography, typing on a non-proportional typewriter. You know what I mean by that? Each word in a non-proportional, unlike the cool word processing programs we have, you have to use Courier font in order to reproduce this. And by the way, this book, these 4 volumes of the collected poems of Larry Eigner, were put out in 8.5 by 11 Courier type, which is really weird because it almost looks like it's a mimeograph book or a Xerox book. It's such a throwback. Okay, so the suggestion is that the word bookshelf simulates the letters as a kind of row of things. Yeah. Bookshelf is this biomass. Where's it raining? Bins, sliding around. Oh, here's a different slant. The sun on a puddle in the street. Now it's morning again. The wall has extra room. Do you want to do it, Rebecca?
Well, I am struck by spaciousness of spaces between the letters of bookshelf. And what is bookshelf? A bookshelf is just a holder for books. It's not the books. It's the space, the place where you could put a book, but it's really the empty space. The only line that is one word in this poem is bins. A bin is a receptacle. It's an empty place to put something.
Nice.
And we end the poem with extra room. This whole thing feels
Rebecca,
like a
if I had the capacity to give you an honorary PhD, would you accept? Can we give her a big hand? That was I will just say one more thing about this poem, and I may be overreading it. Most people don't see Larry Eigner as an explicitly political poet. Most people don't see Larry Eigner as an implicitly political poet. I think once in a while he has something very shrewd to say about politics and current events. And he might be saying it here. It's 1983. He's moved to Berkeley from one super blue state, Massachusetts, to another. And it's morning again. It's 1983. The President of the United States has declared that it's morning in America again. That would be Ronald Reagan, the former governor of the aforementioned blue state. That's a phrase that, whether it's specifically, politically, or ideologically resonant or not, is one that anybody reading this poem in 1983 or 1984 or 1986 or 1988 would say, oh, there's an echo of Reagan's claim. And the claim is that that Americans can fulfill the promise of America, and that if you just work hard and all that stuff. And trickle down was the economic theory. Trickle down. So no, it's raining in America, and the poor poet, disabled poet, got himself across the country with his books. His only possessions, basically, is treated open-armed by the poetry community and thought of as a great potential influence of a new movement of poetry. Realizes that, after all, it is morning in America. I'm with my people. I'm where I need to be. Even though my wall is barren, just like my coffers. It's not a flipping the bird, fuck you, to trickle-down economics and the elimination of funding for the federal support of artists, such as Larry Eigner, who could have used a grant or two. Not that. It's an implicit echo that we, or in this case, a poet, gets to claim what morning in America means. Thank you all for working hard.